united and it feels so good. Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watch You Want and thanks for logging on. Well, if you're looking for the Led Zeppelin reunion, I keep looking. For everyone else, it feels so good to be back. Now, I know that people were asking what happened to Watch You Want, what happened to the team. It got to the point where even Dave Chappelle was asking what happened to that guy. So, quick story. As of today, our Watch You Want and Govberg teams have united. 2 teams, 1 family, under a single roof and 3 floors in historic suburban Philadelphia. We have combined the teams. We took a hike up I-95, about 1,100 miles, and together we unify pre-owned and new in a single corporate campus. Most of our team, including Josh Thanos, Mike Michaels, Jason Main, and the rest of our family, did decide to relocate with us. Federico elected to remain in Miami, and we wish him all the best. And to inaugurate an episode where, quite frankly, I'm welcoming an entirely new team to the program, I want to bring on my first ever walk-on guest, Mr. George Mayer, Director of Sales and Watch Buying for Govberg. George, come on.
Timmy, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Hey, this is fun. This is completely different, guys. It's a little bit bootleg because I just got my setup going again. It's the Millennium Falcon broadcast rigs, so please forgive any quirks and hiccups along the way. So George, let's get back to one of our favorite features from recent broadcasts, which is This or That. This or That, as you know, is where we take 2 watches and we let our guest decide which one is the watch he wants. So George, 2 unconventional Pateks from recent times, the 5235G regulator and the 5524G pilot's watch. One is technically ambitious, the regular. The other is aesthetically and thematically ambitious, the pilot's watch. Which one do you put on your wrist? And remember, you can't say, I'm going to pick the one that I can sell and then buy the other and make a profit. So you got to buy the one you want.
Okay, so I think I'm in the minority on this one. I personally would go with the 5235. So the 5524 has been, extremely popular ever since it came out. Highly controversial. People said, it's not Patek. And why white gold? I mean, a lot of reasons why it was under scrutiny. Ironically, it's now so in demand that it's trading for well above the retail price. The 5235 is another one where I think it first came out. I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, and there was a major delay on the watch. I know Thierry Stern said that one of the main problems, I think, was the amplitude on the watch. Something that's very, very different from them to do a regulator, in the annual calendar. I mean,
okay.
Patek is definitely known for the annual calendar, but very different for them to do it in a regulator. And I think it's just an absolutely beautiful watch with the vertical satin finish dial, and something that I would definitely enjoy wearing very much.
Okay, well that's an interesting perspective because I have to mention that quite frankly, it is exactly what I would have picked between the 2. That is my favorite Patek Philippe of all time.
Interesting.
That is a watch.
Know that.
No, honestly, it's one of those things where the weighting makes it better. And as you mentioned, there was a wait for that watch. It was unveiled around 2011. It became widely available in 2013. And by widely, I mean they started to fulfill orders. So, by the way, I just want to make sure with our sound right there, we have that one lav off to the right muted, guys. If you could correct that, just press the button on the front till it turns green. We're good. We're up. Okay. I think we fixed the sound issue. You guys out there? Okay. We're back up and running, and we're talking to George Mayer, Director of Sales and Lead Watch Buyer, and he's basically Govberg's representative in the haute de gamme. He's a guy who's worked directly with Patek Philippe for years. This is the Watch You Want show, but he's visiting me from across our corporate campus. We're talking about the watch that he would pick, and between the 5524G pilot's watch and the technically ambitious 5235G regulator, George would take the 5235G, and it's for the reason I have always basically expressed. This being my favorite Patek, it's just a landmark watch, technologically and aesthetically. It's everything you love about a DeLorean, everything you love about a Patek Philippe, and everything you love about complication and technology in the watch space. The DeLorean quip, by the way, is down to that gorgeous satin-finished steel grain style dial. All right. So now we're going to jump forward because I know we've talked a little bit about Patek Philippe, and I want to kind of advance the discussion, since this is sort of George's specialty and his area of passion, to the unusual coincidence of having 2 consecutive years where a major sports watch line had an anniversary. The 20th anniversary this year of the Aquanaut, the 40th anniversary of the Nautilus last year. I think the Aquanaut very much a sports watch for our time, the Nautilus a sports watch for all time. 4 references, George. How did you respond to the 4 of them?
So when the Nautilus anniversary pieces first came out, I'll never forget it. I remember, I think it broke out of London, and they were highly criticized. It was interesting. The photographs that leaked showed, you know, the embossing on the dials, you know, to be very loud, in your face. That's certainly not the case. The baguettes for the hour markers are very subtle as well.
Yeah.
Very different for Patek to do a 44mm case in the 5976. It's almost like they took a page out of AP's book. AP has built a powerhouse brand off of just the Royal Oak, which I think is one of the most, you know, iconic models ever to be made, you know, by Gerald Genta. And, you know, they've experimented with different sizes, materials. I thought it was a great move for Patek to do a 44mm case. You know, they told me that they're never going to do that ever again, a 44mm case, which I thought was interesting. But there's a lot of guys out there who would like to wear a bigger watch, and I think that, you know, it fits that demand. So I think it's you know, a really good move for them to have done that.
So now the 4 models, people need to kind of remember, last year we had the 40th anniversary of the Nautilus, and Patek waited until later in the year because there was a 3rd generation overseas from Vacheron. There was a new line of Royal Oaks from Audemars Piguet, and I think Patek wanted the Nautilus to have its own moment. And I think by releasing in the fall these special references, they really achieved that. Now the 5976 you're talking about, the 44mm watch, that was a very, very bold piece, like you said, with baguette diamonds on the dial, a 44mm case that Patek is not going to reprise. The 5711P was a lot more subtle. Talk a little bit about what you thought of this piece, the demand and interest you saw from customers, and also maybe the quality of using diamonds on the dial and how this is different from a traditional diamond set dial in character.
Yeah, well, I think the 5711 steel blue dial, it's one of the most in-demand watches in the entire industry right now, I would say. You know, very iconic. It's their classic, you know, their Royal Oak from AP. I thought it was cool how they did, you know, they made 1,300 of the 5976, 700 of the 5711/1P. And I think it's cool, you know, obviously you can feel the difference, but you can't really see it. You know, if you look really closely, you'll see that etching in the dial and you'll see the baguettes, but you know, from far away, I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference between the platinum version and the steel version. I mean, slightly different dial color, but I think it's cool how they did a very small, limited run of the watch, you know, of a model that they make in steel that's part of the regular line and such an iconic piece. So, whereas the 5976 was, you know, stepping out of the box, I think, for Patek, the 5711 was a little bit more conservative, and it worked. I thought that I thought they were both great. And certainly the demand in the market shows that.
Okay, so guys, for those of you just joining us, I want to just restate some of the major news that I've got for you. Obviously, my friend George Mayer joining me from Gothenburg. We are in a different space, in a different place. Our Watch You Want team has relocated 1,100 miles up I-95, which is the major eastern road here in the U.S. for our foreign viewers. And we have combined our 2 teams into one family, a single roof on 3 floors. Our corporate campus is now in historic suburban Philadelphia. So we've moved our team, and most of the team, including Mike Michaels, Josh Thanos, friends we know from the show, have come with us. Federico elected to remain in Miami. I know a lot of questions about that, but we wish him the best going forward. Federico, however, did stay in Miami. Now our team here is focusing on both pre-owned, which is Watch You Want's traditional strength, and new watches, which is Gothenburg's authority as authorized retailer of over 50 premium brands. And I'm joined by George, who's a buddy, but is also the director of sales and director of watch buying for Gothenburg. We're talking Patek Philippe today because that is his passion, and Gothenburg will be at the Patek Philippe Grand Exhibition in New York City next week from the 13th to the 23rd. So I'll be in and about the spaces and the Formula E race that weekend, so stop by and meet us. So, George, now the Aquanaut, that's this year's 20th anniversary. I wrote a great article that you can read on the Govberg blog right now about the Aquanaut and how 20 years of the Aquanaut has sort of made it a watch for our time. Born in the late 90s, it's a millennial sports watch. And George, do you get the sense that the Aquanaut just has a different character and personality to it?
Definitely. I mean, a little bit more sporty. I think you can wear the Nautilus, to formal events. What's interesting, Thierry Stern himself wears the 5164 with the suit a lot of the time.
Okay.
I thought the 5650 and the 5168 with the blue, it makes it a little even more sporty. So I don't know if you could wear it in a formal setting. But once again, with the 5168 going with the bigger size to 42 millimeters, I think it's a great move. Once again, I think there are a lot of people out there that want to wear a bigger watch. I think the millennials or the younger clientele base for Patek wants to wear bigger watches.
Yeah.
And then I think the 5650, that was the only watch I didn't get to see at Basel that they didn't have to show. And then ironically, it was the first watch that was released to the market. It's cool how they're using different materials now in the watch, and I think that was like that was like the funky new release from Patek this year. That was like one of the talks of the show, in addition to the 5320G Perpetual.
Now, it's interesting, the 5650 is probably the most cerebral watch released at Basel World this year. Obviously a open dial, a half open dial. It's ambitious for Patek. Stylistically, it's the kind of thing that I think is a signature of Thierry Stern, bold, contemporary, but there's a logic to it because the compressible sort of multi-torsion bar flexible member that's used to actuate the dual time function of this watch is really the showpiece of the timepiece and the reason that it's part of the advanced research series. Talk a little bit about the response you've gotten from clients over this watch because, like I said, cerebral, very much an engineer or an engineering mind's watch. How are people reacting to that?
Well, the demand for it's insane. I think they're only making 500 pieces. I think they could have sold 2,000. I think the price point is very reasonable for what it is. Something new and innovative for Patek. The 5164 is an extremely popular watch using the same complication base, and I think it was a big hit. And it's another one where you see people are paying like premiums over the retail price just because the demand far exceeds the supply. So I think the market and the secondary market price shows how well received it's been by the market.
Yeah, this is a watch that honestly I didn't get the first time I saw it, and I have to say that the more I see it, the more the logic of it, cutting the complication components in the dual time from about 37 to a third of that, it takes so much energy and effort to make this part, and then once manufactured to actually finish it to a Patek standard such that you can have an open dial. You really have to revisit this and come back to it a couple of times to realize just how extraordinary it is. And I think this is one of those watches we'll look at as a landmark because
Agreed.
The elimination of lubrication, the elimination of pivots, the elimination of pivot jewels. I think this is the kind of watch people will say was an engineering milestone, and the industry is going to take its cues from it. Obviously, it starts with the haute de gamme, hundreds of thousands of dollars. In time, I think this is going to be one of those watches like the Bulova Accutron in its day, like the first Rolex Submariner, like the first coaxial escapement Omega DeVille of the 90s. We just see as a point of reference 10, 20, 30 years down the road.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a watch that, I think a lot of the manufacturers now are trying to make watches that need to be serviced less often.
Yes.
And I think, that's what Patek is showing, that they have the capabilities to do so, and they're heading in that direction, so.
Yeah, and like you said, service is really the great challenge in the industry today, and Patek is showing that you can create a watch that by its design requires less of it.
Mm-hmm.
So now I want to basically fill in everyone. If you're just joining us, Govberg and Watch You Want have combined into a single team under one roof and 3 floors in suburban Philadelphia. Watch You Want still does pre-owned, Govberg still does new, but the integration and level of customer service is going to reach all new heights within the industry. This is a truly special experiment that I think, like the Patek 5650 going forward, will be remembered as a landmark for our industry. Now, I also want to call out the fact that George and I are both kind of entranced by Patek Philippe, and we think that in the modern era, calling tomorrow's collectible is the ultimate challenge for a collector. Can you finger that watch that you think tomorrow is going to be a watch of reference and a timepiece that collectors actively seek in the back catalog? George, you've got your choices, and because Govberg's in the same building as us now, you actually have them on hand. Why don't you share them with us?
Okay, so I'll start with the 5205 Rose.
I'll be your hand
with
model.
the black lacquer dial. So the movement that's inside this watch was used in the 5135, which was the Gondolo annual calendar, the calendario. And as a result of the two watches, you know, the case of the calendario was very big, you know, where it was like a tonneau case shape, and the movement that was in that is now in this. And with the 5205, it was like the first watch where Patek says, you know what, we're going to design the movement first and then the case. So the case fits the movement perfectly, and it has like a very, you know, modern feel to it. You know, the annual calendar is something that, you know, Patek's done a bunch of. You know, even in the current line, you have the 5146, you have the 5396. I like how it has apertures, and then also it has like holes in the case. I mean, it gives it a nice contemporary feel and look. It has a nice little subtle pop to it. So, you know, I really like this watch a lot.
Now that's a 2013 model year version, the R variant of a watch that originally came out of Baselworld in 2010. And a lot of times the initial design effort of a watch gets the model off the block. But I'm not a colored gold guy, and even I think that the combination of the black dial with the rose gold on this watch with the concave bezel absolutely stuns. And I don't think our macro camera is working tonight. Otherwise, I'd call attention to the fact that this watch has beautifully scalloped lugs, and in profile, it actually has a tremendously sensuous elegance to it that's missed in the head-on shot we've got on the on-screen graphic. But we keep coming back to this watch because I can't get enough of it, and frankly, neither can the market, because there's still a wait list for this one. But George, why don't you show us the 5235G and talk about why this is a future Patek collectible?
So this was another watch that, you know, Patek struggled to make in the beginning. I mean, Patek doesn't, you know, compromise anything. They wanted it to be perfect. So, you know, before putting it into the market, they wanted to make sure that there were no QC issues. It was at least a 2-year delay from when it was announced and put into a catalog. And I know, you know, Thierry Stern has said that he'll never put a watch in a catalog ever again until it's fully ready. You know, struggling with the dial on this, struggling with the amplitude for the movement. You know, it's just an awesome movement with the micro rotor, signature Patek, and I think it's a beautiful watch in addition to being something that, you know, who knows if they'll do something again like this. I mean, you know, it'll be interesting to see if they come out with a 5235 Rose black dial, if they do it in a different metal, or if it's just it. If it's just it, I could see it becoming a very collectible piece down the road.
And the thing about that watch is, you know, first is a flag that flies forever. This was the first watch to come out of the Advanced Research Series work with synthetic escapements, synthetic hairsprings. All the work that was done in the Advanced Research Series gave birth to the 5235, and it was really the production realization of that series that began in 2005, combining everything except the actual Gyromax SI balance. So, like George said, it's a watch that was conceived to be original in so many ways that it actually resulted in somewhat lower production. And for a constrained production, modern Patek Philippe, featuring so many firsts, for instance, it's a regulator, it has stop seconds, it's an annual calendar application of Patek's micro rotor architecture. All these things make it unusual and special. And it doesn't hurt that it's just like a sizzling look. I mean, the watch is gorgeous.
So good looking. And it has the added mystique to it with how it was with the distribution cycle of it, in the sense that it had that delay. Then for a while it was actually taken out of their catalog, off their website, off the price list, and now it's back. So I think, you know, who knows if they, you know, recognize an issue that they then, you know, have taken care of. But, you know, it remains to be seen how much longer they'll make it and if they'll do any more iterations of the watch. So. Okay.
And now from the unique perhaps to a well-known model line, but maybe a lesser-known model within the line. You have the Nautilus 5712 1A, and you're calling this as a future collectible.
So I absolutely love this watch. You know, it's one that's been out for over a decade now. I think the moon phase complication is the most aesthetically pleasing. Is it needed? No, but then again, I think it's beautiful. I also like the asymmetric dial on it. very much so, with the power reserve over in the top left-hand corner and the second sub-dial. One of my favorite watches that I own is my 3710. Which is a black dial Nautilus with Roman numerals. Has a cool little complication at the top for winding efficiency, a little interactive feature to it.
Now the 3710, that is already a collectible.
Yeah, no, it is. You don't see many of them. Where the model has been upgraded since then. I mean, it's a closed case back. So now the 5711 shows the 324 in there. The 5712 too, micro rotor, shows off the movement in the back. But this is a watch that I think, the market is still extremely strong for it, very difficult to get, just a great looking watch. I mean, you can wear it sporty, you can wear it dress, very versatile, and one that'll forever be iconic Patek.
And the other thing that's great about it is a Nautilus application of the caliber 240 micro rotor base, which has always been Patek's, in the modern era, Patek's upmarket micro rotor automatic relative to the 315, relative to the 324. It's just a more exclusive, finer, thinner Patek Philippe automatic, and you get the benefit of the same field of vision you would have on the case back with a manual, but you get the convenience of an automatic, which feels right for the Nautilus model line. It should be convenient. It's still a sports watch.
Yep.
Okay, so now I've got my choices. I actually have a couple of Patek Philippe watches that I picked as future collectibles. If I had to call the shot, I would absolutely match George's pick of the 5235G for all the reasons we mentioned. Plus, if you're a big fan of the old 3448 perpetual calendar, you get the recapitulation of those case and lug lines with the 5235G. So even as advanced and progressive as this design is, it still does pay deference to Patek's history. Rolling on, I think the rarely seen Ahmed Siddiqui special edition from 2011 of the 5130P, the Mecca edition, one of my all-time favorite modern Pateks, 150 pieces, gorgeous in green. Green is a color whose time I think has come for watches. And I don't mean this green, by the way. This is my Swatch System Frog, just so we can detox, a little bit of Patek detox for those of you who are following us. I'm wearing my Reverso Tourbillon today, and I'm wearing my System Frog in green. Two of my favorites from opposite ends of the spectrum. I love them equally. And the System Frog came from Mom, so double the sentimental value there. But yeah, I love the 5130P Mecca edition. It replaces, I believe it replaces, I want to say Moscow on the dial. So a cool watch, a special occasion, 150 pieces for the world, and just a watch for like a blue chip dealer in Siddiqui and Sons. So it's got a great story behind it, and the look of the watch tells the story even if you don't know it. Now, in terms of other watches that I feel have some potential, the 5270G014. Now, the 5270 came out in 2011. Originally, very simple dial, no tachymetric scale. Later on, from about 2013, I want to say, to 2015, there was like a chin on the watch. So you had a short-lived variant where you had the tachymetric scale, you had the blue dial, the white gold case, and you had a little bit of a sort of undercut at the bottom, at the lowermost register.
The pregnant tack, as I've heard some people refer to it as, yes.
Subsequently replaced by the 5270-19, which doesn't have the famed chin. No, it's not the Jay Leno watch, don't call it that. I think the short-lived Dash 14 with its white metal, blue dial, and its short run is a future Patek Philippe collectible. Because let's face it, rarity, a short run, and a dial variation, collectors can't say no.
And typically, the watches that get the most criticized from Patek, I mean, how many times have we seen it just in the last 5 years end up being the ones that everyone wants and are the most collectible?
Yeah.
So looking back, I mean, I think the 5270 is one of the most underrated watches. I mean, obviously, everyone raves about the 5970 with Lomania movement. Awesome watch, don't get me wrong. If you compare the two watches side by side, I mean, you could make a very strong argument that the 5270 is actually a superior watch. And I think that once it goes, a lot of times people want what they can have.
Yeah.
And I think once we go through all the iterations of the 5270, I mean, I think there'll be a 5270J, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do a 5270P without diamonds on the bezel. And it'll be interesting to see, if there's a flip in the marketplace between the 5270 and the 5970, and what happens to those chin variations, because you would think that there isn't going to be any chin variations on the other configurations, such as the 5270 Rose doesn't have it. I doubt that they'll do it on the the J, and once it's gone, you know, look back and say, oh yeah, they made it with the chin for a little bit. It'll be interesting to see.
And I think when you have a modern Patek Philippe reference where, you know, we're no longer dependent on like Lamagna Abauches to create the movement, you have to really break down production into different variations, short-lived dials, short-lived model variations. You mentioned that there might be a J, a yellow gold Patek Philippe 5270. Just like with the 5970, there was a one-year run of the J. I think we might see the same thing with the 5270 going forward. So within the span of production, which is going to span probably close to a decade when all is said and done, look for individual variants that didn't live long lives. Those are the future collectibles. And finally, my choice for a future Patek Philippe collectible, not because it's rare, but because it's special, and it brought the Aquanaut model line into its own, was the 2011 to present 5164A, the Travel Time Aquanaut. What do you think of that?
Absolutely love the watch. You know, I think it's one that, obviously it's a sports watch with a rubber strap, but one that can be worn with a full suit. You know, I love the feature behind having a second time zone. You can choose to, you know, hide it if you want, if you don't want to have it, which is cool. And just if you're somebody who travels a lot, I mean, you know, it's a versatile watch where you have a function that can tell you 2 different time zones if you're running around. So awesome piece, great looking.
Yeah, so the key thing to remember is doing a dual time complication on the Aquanaut, a feature that had never been deployed on the Nautilus line, really gave the model a chance to breathe, establish its own identity. Remember, the Aquanaut's only been around since 1997. This is its 20th year, and I think the 5164 will be one of those models we look back on as a moment when the Aquanaut kind of emerged from the shadow of its older brother. Now, only watch, George. Okay, I'm going to let you lead off with this one because you're probably getting calls about this. But a couple of new watches that have been announced since I vanished off the not the dial, the face of the earth. The FP Journe Mono Pusher Chronograph, 44 millimeters in Tantal and blue dial, piece unique.
Unbelievable, right? I feel like if anybody else, maybe besides Francois-Paul Journe, made this watch, it wouldn't have been an only watch, right? I mean, think about the R&D that was put into that. God only knows how much time he spent on doing that.
Unique case, unique dial.
Everything about it. It's unbelievable. And he said, you know, that he will never, ever use it again. And I believe him. I mean, when he's made other, you know, movements and said it was a limited edition, that was it. So, you know, if it was another group, I think that, you know, if it was Swatch Group, Richemont, LVMH, you know, you would see them putting it in different metals, different configurations of the model. The fact that it really is the only watch, no pun intended, like that is awesome. And the fact that it's ridiculously cool, I mean, I'll let you take the spotlight here because you know more than I when it comes to, you know, the true mechanics behind it. But, you know, in reading about it, it's somewhat backwards, right? With you know, I read the review when it compares it to the Datograph, for instance.
Yeah, everything about it's literally a piece unique. Now, the thing about only watches, it's a every 2-year watch auction for muscular dystrophy benefit. Now, since 2005, we've seen a lot of interesting variants. Most of them variations on existing watches. A different color, a skeletonized dial, some inset gems. Generally, you'll see a lot of the color red thrown in. They're interesting watches, but very rarely do you see an entirely bespoke timepiece, like the kind you would commission one-off from a watchmaker in like the 1800s, like a true only watch in every respect. And that's what Journe's done. The estimate on this one, by the way, 208,000 to 415,000, George.
I'll take the over.
Yeah, so will I. no way you're getting this for $200,000.
It's the Journe, you know, 5370T, I would say. You know, it's like it's super, super cool. And I think that you know, the more people learn about it, they'll realize just how special it is, and you know, and for the fact that it's going at an auction for a good cause, I think it's just going to go for over the $500,000 mark.
Absolutely. A very good cause and a very special occasion. And Journe, not the only one participating. There are many. You can see it on the Only Watch website. You can see the full array of submissions. But some that stuck out, in my opinion, included not just the Journe, which everyone's talking about, but the Zenith Defy El Primero 21 only watch that everyone should be talking about. Now, George, this is a variation on a watch that Zenith has launched in sort of a comeback year. A comeback campaign. Jean-Claude Biver, no longer CEO of the brand, but still, in a lot of ways, quarterbacking its major moves. This is 44 millimeters, black DLC titanium, open dial, yellow accents, and you've got a incredible, mega, like just ultra high level foudroyant, coexisting, 2 escapements,
2 separate power reserves,
carbon hairsprings, 2 power reserves. Does this watch, I mean, let's talk about the model in general. Does it redefine Zenith, or is it a step in the right direction?
I think it's both. I mean, I talk about the great new energy and people behind the brand. I mean, JCB, his track record speaks for himself. You now have Julien from Vacheron, who was there for a decade, who was working for Vacheron in Hong Kong. He's now the CEO. You know, talk about value, right? I mean, I think that you know, they're sort of like I would say the mid-tier pillar for LVMH. You have Hublot on the high end, Tag Heuer on the relatively speaking lower end, and then they're the mid-tier brand. And I mean, you know, the El Primero movement is one of the best chronographs ever made. Yeah. And now they're offering, you know, a 100th of a second chronograph at that price point. I mean, that's insane. I mean, in terms of value. And I think they're going to do lots of cool things moving forward. I know that Jean-Claude has talked about doing a new model without an escapement. You know, I know that's something that he's messed around with Tag Heuer some. He's a guy, you just feel his energy when he's in the room. And
I can attest to that.
And I think that Zenith is a brand to watch over the next, you know, 5 years. I think that they could definitely become a powerhouse brand.
And they've done some interesting things. I mean, recently they announced a partnership with the Bamford Watch Department.
Great move.
Which is a very small division of a huge multi-billion-dollar like military equipment manufacturer. So absolute top-of-the-line stuff. You can customize your watch through Bamford and still get your Zenith warranty. That's ambitious, and that's real blue sky thinking. But also, you've got watches like the Day-Fi 21. You have a concept, I think JCB was talking about maybe having people who buy a Zenith come stay at a hotel to be built on the Zenith.
Everyone that buys one, yeah. He's all about experiences, you know, and I think the fact that his passion is something that I think is second to none. And this is his last stint. I believe he's 68 years old. Don't hold me to that, but you know, I think he has you know, another 7 years left to really plug away. And you know, he's built up Blancpain, Omega, Tag Heuer, Hublot, of course. And he says this is his last hurrah, and it's what he'll be remembered for, is what you know, he's telling people. So I think he's going to make his mark in his final hurrah. And I loved Zenith before he was on board and taking control of it, and I think it's only going to get better.
Yeah, this is interesting. This is kind of like, you know, how towards the end, Nick Hayek Sr. said, you know what, I'm stepping down as the head honcho of the Swatch Group. I'm going to hand it over to my kids, and I'm going to run Breguet. That's going to be my last great mission. And he did revitalize Breguet, building it up to something approaching one of the leaders at the absolute top of the market from almost a lost brand in the 80s. And Jean-Claude Biver says, you know, I've got one last comeback in me, and it's going to be Zenith. So interesting stuff. Another interesting topic along those lines, Audemars Piguet with a piece-unique ceramic Royal Oak perpetual calendar. Now, the one thing about this that caught my attention is that with an estimate of $83,000 to $124,000, this Royal Oak perpetual calendar covers the price of the standard ceramic perpetual. So you could buy the only watch in theory and get it for the price of the standard ceramic. What's the response been to the ceramic perpetual in general this year?
People love it. I know they're only going to do 100 a year for 5 years. Okay. I'd be intrigued, you know, I have yet to see one, like hold one in person. I wonder about the durability. You know, okay. They say that it's been tested a lot, and I bet it is very durable. That was my one question with the watch, because it's super good looking, and AP definitely is a powerhouse brand. You know, part of the Holy Trinity, and it's super good looking. And I think you know, the demand's been super strong for it. That would be my only concern with that, but I think from what I've been told that it shouldn't be. Yeah, so
I mean, trust me, I guarantee you there were some folks in Switzerland wearing two, like double straps,
knocking them around,
and they're basically like,
take it for a test drive.
Your mission is to like go drive this thing while riding an ATV and crash. And they probably vetted that. What was important to me with the ceramic was that it's still hand finished. Like, I wondered, are you going to need industrial processes to create a Royal Oak finish on that bezel, that case, and that bracelet?
Lots of hours. Yep.
In the end, it's actually more labor intensive in terms of manual labor invested in creating those bevels, those grained finishes, those polished sections. So I'm all about the ceramic. But again, you could get the blue dialed piece unique potentially for the same price as the standard watch, so watch that space. And speaking of the Zenith, another reason I threw the only watch Day 521 in there is that with an estimate of $13,000 to $19,000 US for the only watch auction, this could be an opportunity for someone to get a piece unique from Zenith for not too much more than the standard watch, which is about $11,000, $12,000 in its most deluxe version.
Yeah, I think that's a bargain. You know, I know the standard variations of it, I know there's 3 of them. They're not going to be available until the fall, and I don't believe they're going to make many of them too, which I think is smart. You know, I think it'll be good to keep it exclusive. I wouldn't be surprised if that AP goes for more, you know, on the higher end of that, if not more too, seeing as, like you said, you can, I mean, it's the estimate is basically what the retail price is, you know, if you were to buy the regular one, you know.
I think all the estimates are set by the manufacturers to be a little bit conservative. It's like when Porsche says, yeah, it goes from 0 to 60 in 4 seconds, and then it goes from 0 to 60 in like 3. It's kind of like that, and I think we're going to see all of these estimates exceeded. I just think the Journe is going to be a ridiculous excess.
It's a special watch.
So guys, next week, remember, from July 13th through the 23rd, the Patek Philippe Grand Exhibition in New York. I mention this because Patek is a house specialty of Govberg and of George. I will be there as a representative of Govberg, so open to the public, 10 rooms, it's at Cipriani. It's going to essentially be a recreation of everything Patek has in Switzerland, from the Rue de Rhône flagship boutique to the company museum, in 10 rooms at Cipriani. I mean, full dress. This is going to be a special occasion, and given that from Henri Stern to his son Philippe to his son Terry, every Stern president of the company has trained in the US, this is something that's also emotionally important to the chieftains of the brand. So I hope to see you there, but I'll also be at the Formula E race that same week, where we may see none other than Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore namesake Sébastien Buemi, the runaway championship leader of the series. Hey, you might see me there, you might see me at the Grand Exhibition. Either way, this has been Watch You Want. I'm Tim, he's George. I've got an entire new crew. This set is temporary. I'll be back on Friday, and thanks for logging on.
Thanks for watching.